Distinguished guests, welcome to today's highly anticipated keynote event. As you can clearly see, today's overarching theme is Poverty is not Buddhism, the inspiration of the great wealthy elders. Today we are also very honored to once again have the esteemed Khenpo Sodargye with us here today. It is truly a profound and immense privilege for all of us. Today our revered teacher will also, for everyone present, whether you are diligent students or deeply devoted followers, graciously lead us together on a completely new and transformative spiritual journey. Now let us hand over time to our esteemed and highly revered Khenpo Sodargye, a truly remarkable spiritual teacher.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are once again gathering in a small focused group to have a meaningful discussion together. The significant topic of our discussion is Poverty is not Buddhism, the profound inspiration of the great wealthy elders. Actually, these topics were mainly provided by your side. I haven't had the chance to think about them in great detail because recently I've been busy with some translation work. Recently, I have been translating a work called An Explanation of the Ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. An explanation of the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras is indeed one of the 5 treatises of Maitreya Bodhisattva. It is widely considered to be very famous and highly regarded within the realm of Buddhism. There was a translation of it during the Tang Dynasty, but when compared to the current versions, it is quite different, including the Tibetan and some other translations. It is relatively difficult to comprehend and grasp the details of this subject matter. So, after much consideration, I have decided to spend 3 full years, beginning this year, to carefully translate it. For me, this is something of importance and holds considerable significance. But I don't know if anyone will truly be able to fully understand or appreciate it all, or whether anyone will value it. It's hard to say, because nowadays we currently live in an era, a time of constant evolution, where there is an extreme trust in and relentless pursuit of material things and worldly possessions. In this materialistic era, I think it may be quite difficult to find genuine spiritual fulfillment, especially the essence of wisdom from ancient texts. Who would go looking for it is also hard to say. In any case, for nearly 30 years now, for the past 30 years, I have always placed great importance on translation. Although in recent years, I have previously given some talks at various schools and other organizations, but public speaking is certainly not my strongest suit, and I am definitely not a natural orator. Besides, I must admit that I never truly had the opportunity to attend those formal educational institutions myself. In fact, I only began my elementary school education when I was already 16 years of age, and I only studied in elementary school for 2 years, then went on to a middle school. After successfully finishing my middle school education, I then attended a teacher's college. But before the final semester ended and before I officially graduated, I had already become a monk. So I never actually even received a graduation certificate from elementary school either. Nor did I get a diploma from the teacher's college. I only have a middle school graduation certificate. I did complete all 3 years of middle school. So in terms of worldly diplomas and qualifications, I really have no credentials to be communicating with all of you. Last year, when we attended the World Buddhist Youth Seminar in Hong Kong, I was the only one who hadn't attended a college or university. Everyone else participating there had at least a bachelor's degree or higher. So when they asked me to speak, I said, I am truly the least qualified person here. And today it is the same. Among so many truly talented and elite individuals gathered here, for me to speak to all of you, it may not necessarily bring much significant benefit. But when it truly comes to translating sacred scriptures and profound treatises, I have personally accumulated many valuable years of extensive experience myself. I do have some confidence, because from 1987 to around 1997, I was basically exploring various avenues and mainly giving extensive teachings and insightful lectures to many people. Then starting from 1997, after 10 years, I began to truly engage in translation. So, over these past many years regarding the profound teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, I have diligently translated some individual scriptures and various important treatises into the Chinese language, and the total number of these translated works is probably quite considerable and substantial. In the future, if any of you are genuinely interested in understanding the profound meaning of some sacred scriptures and scholarly treatises of Tibetan Buddhism, please know that while I am diligently translating these important texts, I am always very focused and meticulously attentive to every detail. I want to faithfully translate the wisdom of the great masters and sages of previous generations, conveying it as accurately and completely as possible. In this regard, I am quite confident in myself, possessing a deep and unwavering belief in my abilities and understanding. Therefore, I sincerely hope that all of you, if you are genuinely interested in exploring the more profound and intricate teachings of Buddhism, and truly wish to understand these ancient wisdoms through a contemporary and accessible modern perspective, perhaps you will find that I have indeed translated quite a lot. Among these, I personally consider some to be extremely precious. Each time I carefully read some ancient Tibetan texts and find them profoundly insightful, or some of the 5 great treatises that I have studied, including the teachings of Vajrayana within Tibetan Buddhism. I often think that our Tibetan people have always had a very complete Buddhist tradition, a truly perfect lineage, but in the Han region, although the Buddhist lineage is also very complete, if it could be further supplemented with some of the key instructions and theories from Tibetan Buddhism, it might indeed become even more truly complete and comprehensive. So every time I am translating, I feel incredibly excited and deeply enthusiastic. I feel that many Han people are also especially devout and sincerely dedicated to their beliefs, which is truly inspiring to witness, and particularly very blessed. These people use their wisdom to understand the profound meanings of the great masters of the past, which is extremely valuable and worthwhile. So I have always felt that I myself, living in this world, my primary and most significant contribution may very well be in the specialized area of linguistic translation and interpretation. Einstein once profoundly said, "The true main value of our lives is in what we give." Giving is truly the most important value in one's life. We shouldn't really see what we gain for ourselves as our true value or worth. Many of us think, "What have I gained?" We believe that if we gain something, we are successful. We have this kind of mindset. But from the profound perspective of the scientist Einstein, it's not truly that a person is remarkable because of what they have gained or accumulated. Instead, it should fundamentally be about what we have generously given. So for each and every person, giving is indeed very important. In my own personal life, I honestly can't say I've done a great deal in many areas, but I have devoted all my time and energy to translation. Sometimes I think to myself, maybe no one will really understand it. Sometimes I think worriedly, maybe no one will ever read it. At times, I wonder silently, perhaps after I leave this world, will these ancient scriptures and historical treatises be of even a little help to people in the modern world? If they can be of even the slightest help, I would be truly delighted. So today, just now, I happened to spontaneously come up with this particular passage. The specific viewpoint I'm discussing today, poverty is not Buddhism, is a concept I haven't given any extensive or deep special thought to beforehand. However, in reality, as the very name itself clearly suggests, its meaning and implications are fairly straightforward and easily understandable to most people. Most people probably think that Buddhism is basically a way of life that is very austere and thoroughly pure. It should also be considered a committed lifestyle that seeks willing poverty, profound simplicity, and absolute frugality. Therefore, things like worldly money, social status, and fleeting fame are things that cannot be truly pursued or ultimately obtained in Buddhism. Even if you were to acquire these things, it seems like they might inherently contradict the teachings of Buddhism. Many entrepreneurs also often say, "I originally truly wanted to study Buddhism seriously, but instead of that path. But after starting to learn Buddhism, on one hand, the precepts and rules in Buddhism are quite troublesome, with so many inherent restrictions and significant constraints. On the other hand, Buddhism fundamentally requires living a very simple and unadorned life. But as an entrepreneur, I undeniably need to make money and actively accumulate wealth." This pursuit of wealth, unfortunately, goes directly against the core teachings of Buddhism. Many people commonly hold this kind of thinking. However, in practical reality, this particular perspective may not always be considered very reasonable. Is there a tradition of living a rather austere life in Buddhism? There certainly is. In the teachings of early Buddhism, there is also the idea of being content with little and having very few desires, living a very pure life. Including nowadays, for example, in Myanmar, there is the practice of alms round. Some of you may have been there. Sometimes you can go and experience it yourselves. For example, the way people currently live in Myanmar, including many lay Buddhists, they basically do not accumulate much wealth, often living a life of extreme simplicity. As for monastic Buddhists, they may possess nothing more than a humble bed in their Spartan rooms. They typically go out barefoot into the community to collect alms for their daily meals. And the food they receive this way is what sustains them for the day. Every day some eat only one meal before noon, and some do not eat after midday. This way of life continues even to this day. There are still many practitioners who are living their lives like this, including even nowadays. In a single monastery, there may be hundreds or even thousands of dedicated monks, all living this particular and disciplined kind of life. This profound and structured existence was also demonstrably the case during the historical time of the Buddha, and such foundational teachings and practices exist extensively within the venerable Vinaya tradition. Now, in Buddhism, for example, some of our dedicated and committed entrepreneurs, or people who are a bit more fortunate, does being materially wealthy mean they cannot form a good, genuine connection with Buddhism? Actually, that's definitely not the case. The precepts in traditional Buddhism are also quite flexible and wisely adapt to various circumstances. If one does not exert extraordinary and diligent effort, but instead relies solely on their own inherent merit and good fortune to obtain material possessions and worldly achievements, Buddhists can also live a very comfortable, affluent, and abundantly prosperous life filled with peace and contentment. There is a scripture called the Vinaya Sutra. The Vinaya Sutra was taught by the Buddha during his lifetime, addressed to his disciples, and it is a very detailed scripture about the 4 dignified postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, and their proper conduct. So what does this important scripture actually say? If we do not develop excessive greed and strong attachment to material possessions, then even as practicing monastics regarding the basic clothes they wear, to put it in modern terms, they can wear clothes that are indeed worth a considerable sum, perhaps even tens of thousands of yuan. If a monastic individual lives in hundreds of rooms, or perhaps even owns hundreds of houses, that is also entirely permitted within their established lifestyle. When we carefully studied the precepts in the past, this was also very much the case, consistently observed and understood within the teachings and practices. As for our precepts, in India there is something called the 6 ornaments. After the Buddha entered parinirvana, there were 6 venerable masters who adorned the entire world and its lands. For example, in the field of logic, there were Master Dignaga and Master Dharmakarti. In the Madhyamaka tradition, there were influential masters like the revered Nagarjuna and the esteemed Kandrakarti. Regarding the Vinaya, there were Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha. In the Abhidharma tradition, there were Bodhisattva Sangha and Bodhisattva Vasubandhu. These are known as the 2 sages and 6 ornaments. They fully expounded upon and widely propagated the entire Buddhist doctrine. Who was it that propagated the Vinaya? It was the esteemed Gunaprabha and the venerable Shakyaprabha who significantly propagated it. Among their important treatises, there is one particularly notable work called the Root Vinaya Treatise. In the Root Vinaya Treatise, it is explained very clearly. As I mentioned earlier, if there is no need to create negative karma, and if, through one's own significant merit or effortlessly, one wears truly luxurious clothes worth tens of thousands of yuan, it is also completely permissible to live in and legitimately own hundreds of houses. So nowadays, some people, including some successful entrepreneurs, only know one limited aspect of Buddhist teachings, but not the other important side. For example, some people only know that so-called renunciation means giving up family and many aspects of work. This part they understand. But a true and devoted Buddhist also knows and understands that if all the absolutely necessary conditions are truly present and accounted for, and there is no particular attachment or greed, it is acceptable to possess some wealth. In fact, the teachings of Buddhism are not contradictory. So for some of us, on one hand, we can be very devout Buddhists and deeply committed to our spiritual path. But on the other hand, we can also be truly successful and highly accomplished entrepreneurs. Is there a potential conflict between these two roles? Actually, there is no conflict. Of course, if you genuinely don't want to be a Buddhist and prefer another spiritual religion, or if you simply don't want to be involved with any organized religion at all, that's all perfectly fine. In fact, whether you become a religious person or a non-religious person, I don't think that's the most crucial thing. The most important thing is to be a good person. Of course, we can't say that anyone can avoid doing all bad things 100%. Someone like that wouldn't be called a person, but a bodhisattva, truly remarkable. But at the very least, we should exercise some significant self-restraint. In every single aspect of life, it is truly best if you possess and maintain a strong faith. Why is it considered the absolute best approach? Because if you have faith, it truly gives your heart something substantial to rely on, a profound sense of belonging. If you don't have any faith at all, and the only thing you truly believe in is money, then when you face the most critical and difficult moments in your life, you won't be able to find anything to depend on or trust in. This is actually one of the main and most significant problems in reality. So it is important for us to fully realize and understand that the teachings of Buddhism do not actually emphasize or require that all Buddhists must necessarily live in poverty or be poor. Perhaps many people in today's China, including some famous TV shows and movies from the 1960s and 70s, these might have really influenced everyone in some profound way. What kind of influence did they have? When someone is at a dead end in their marriage or family life, they often choose to become a monk or nun. Oh, this person is already truly very poor indeed. And when they truly have absolutely no other viable options left, they go to live in a monastery. Many of our current societal values, logically speaking, many people might think, including when we monastics come here, many people might think that perhaps we are very pitiful, that we have always faced numerous setbacks in our lives, or have encountered truly major problems indeed, so we couldn't continue down that path. And in the end, the only choice left is to become a monastic, to go to a monastery. That's why in many movies, as the story unfolds, when the character faces suffering, they choose to become a monk or nun. Later, I spoke with some actors and directors about this. I asked them, why is it that in your stories, the least successful people in life are always the monastics? Now, when we monastics go out, we feel a bit embarrassed because so many people have truly watched these particular movies, and these films have truly become a reflection of our lives today. So, in essence, our monasteries seem to be like shelters, and this is also related to the direction of our culture, perhaps especially during the tumultuous time of the Cultural Revolution, which has something to do with it. In countries such as Japan, as well as South Korea and Sri Lanka, in many of their prominent news media outlets, including some popular television shows and motion pictures, the most successful and elite individuals, that is to say, many of our current and existing elites, believe that if someone is very wealthy and has a high status, they are considered elite, high-end people, seen as the most remarkable individuals. So these wealthy people, being rich means being high-end, and people who are rich are seen as especially successful. But in some countries, true success is not measured solely by material wealth or money. More importantly, it's about our deep spiritual values and our fundamental core values, and those who can reach the highest level in these areas should be recognized. In our world, such people are the most noble and the greatest. There is such a point of balance. So what should we think about here? That is, what exactly is Buddhism like when we examine it closely? In fact, Buddhism truly is a form of elite education, a refined discipline of the mind and spirit. You could certainly put it that way. Its comprehensive educational content also encompasses some foundational lower levels, as well as intermediate and more advanced higher levels. Indeed, there are distinct and varied tiers. At the higher, more sophisticated levels, it really is difficult for lay people, for those doing all kinds of worldly business, to achieve all of these important things. Even for many of us who have been monastics for many years, it's also very hard to accomplish. But when it comes to some of the more intricate and intermediate level teachings, you all should absolutely be able to practice them as well. Therefore, we must never, ever think that Buddhism is a path of poverty that no one dares to follow, or that once you start learning, you can't touch any of your family property. And as for the precepts, actually, the Buddhist precepts, such as the bhikshu and novice monk precepts for monastics, do indeed have quite a lot of rules and regulations. But the 5 fundamental precepts for lay people, for those who are not monks or nuns, precepts like these are actually something that each of us, when we genuinely promote ethical and moral values, truly embodies and upholds. These 5 precepts are something that everyone, no matter which country they're from, should consider very important. Not killing, not committing sexual misconduct, not stealing, and also not telling lies, not telling big lies. We haven't even mentioned small lies yet, not telling big lies. As for small lies, we all, especially those of you who do business perhaps, but in Buddhism, when it comes to big lies, it's like saying, I'm not a Buddha, but I pretend to be a Buddha. That's precisely what we now truly call a significantly big fraud, someone who has no genuine accomplishments but falsely claims to be highly accomplished and successful. People like this are also very common in our society. As for some other cases, such as the convenient little lies you might tell in business, or other common behaviors that we observe in our everyday lives, these are not strictly prohibited. So when it comes to the simplest and most fundamental precept, sometimes we as human beings inherently need some kind of external restraint or guiding principle, and that's actually very understandable and entirely reasonable. In this way, we can see that Buddhism, in fact, can also be said, in a certain sense, emphasizes a path that wisely avoids extremes. One should not be overly wealthy or extravagant, nor should one pursue excessive material accumulation, nor should one be excessively poor. There is a well-known verse that we often recite and reflect upon. Let me recite it in Tibetan. 하장 슈부 겸도는 워루 겸도 머티에장 와르미 겸도 제네장 딱다랍숑 토버죠. This includes a prayer that we monastics make. And what exactly does this prayer truly mean? May I not be born into a very wealthy family, because if one is too wealthy, every day is spent calculating finances, and there will be no opportunity to practice the path. Nor do I wish to be reborn into an especially poor or destitute family, because if one is too impoverished, even basic living necessities and food become difficult to manage. May I be born into a comfortable middle-class family and always be able to practice the right path at all times. This is the kind of aspiration being made. Therefore, from this, we can also see that the lifestyle advocated in Buddhism is relatively moderate. Of course, if you have good fortune, that's also acceptable. Here, when we talk about really, truly great elders, do you know that in Buddhist history, there was an elder named Anathapindika? He was considered to be extremely blessed. At that particular time, he could be truly called the richest man in all of Asia. In our modern world today, we often talk about the world's wealthiest people, such as Bill Gates and many other prominent figures. And in Asia, entrepreneurs like Li Ka-shing and Jack Ma, they compete with each other in the modern era. At that time, the wealthiest person in India was actually Anathapindika. Anathapindika devoutly wanted to invite the Buddha to a certain appropriate place to give teachings. He saw that there was a park that was especially beautiful and tranquil, so he wanted to invite him there for his teachings, but this park belonged to a prince. Anathapindika went to him and asked, "Could you sell it to me?" It was just like our modern-day real estate transactions are today. He then said, "I want to invite the Buddha." At that particular moment in time, the prince thought it was utterly impossible, because the entire and vast country of Shravasti was indeed very large. I have actually been there personally before. In the year 1990, I specifically went to Anathapindika's beautiful and serene park. At that particular time, the prince did not agree right away. Later, Anathapindika persistently kept saying, "I truly want to prepare something for the Buddha, the enlightened one." In today's terms, it would be like building a villa as an offering for his residence. He asked, "Could you sell me the entire garden?" Then the prince jokingly said to him in jest, "All right, if you cover my entire park with precious gold, you can have it. If you cover every inch of it with gold, then I can sell it to you." Later, incredibly, Anathapindika really did it. What was truly special about him, he could clearly see things without using any modern detectors at all. He could clearly see valuable treasures hidden deep underground, including precious gold. He could distinctly perceive it with his own naked eyes. He had this ability. That's why he was an especially wealthy person. In the end, he really did cover the entire garden with gold. At that time, the prince was very surprised. He said, "Well, I've already sold you the land." Earlier, we had already successfully finished our verbal agreement. But as for the numerous trees growing abundantly on the land, because there were indeed many, many trees within the expansive garden, we needed to consider them carefully. These particular trees were not sold to you, so the complete ownership of these specific trees is still entirely mine, and I will personally make the offering for them. You, on the other hand, bought the land, so you will be responsible for making the offering of the land itself. As for all the numerous trees that are currently on this land, I will indeed make the offering for them. So the two of us will work together to make offerings to the Buddha. That's why the name of this garden later became called Jetavana Anathapindika's monastery. Jeta refers to Prince Jeta, the son of King Jeta. There were many beautiful and abundant trees in this particular place. Jeta's trees specifically refers to the valuable property of the prince. Anathapindika means the land was bought by him, covered with gold. When I personally went to that place, I truly thought, indeed, in our long and rich history, more than 2,000 years ago, there were such incredibly wealthy and profoundly noble people existing in the world. Later, with great reverence and devotion, they generously offered this magnificent and serene garden to the Buddha and meticulously built a monastery there. There are still some significant ruins remaining today. If you have the fortunate chance, you should definitely go and take a look when you make a spiritual pilgrimage to India. At that particular time, Anathapindika was extremely wealthy and influential. It is also mentioned in other scriptures as well that Anathapindika was not only incredibly wealthy in this present life, but also in many of his numerous previous lives, he was likewise extremely rich and prosperous. I think some of the business owners here are also quite wealthy in this life. This is most definitely truly related to the merit accumulated in past lives. Perhaps in many of your previous lives, you also had the causes and conditions for such wealth. So in the future, you should also strive to do many more good deeds. As we always say, generosity is truly the fundamental cause of great wealth and lasting prosperity. This cause and condition is very important. The causes and conditions taught in Buddhism are things we must never ignore or overlook. The reasoning behind this truly contains a very profound and fundamental truth. Therefore, we need to understand the relationship of these causes and conditions, the relationship between good and evil. In this way, our Buddhism is indeed not about practicing well only because of poverty. Yeah, I see some practitioners deliberately pretending to be poor, but this is not very good either. Back in our Buddhist institute, there was an old lama, an old monk, a senior monk. This venerable old monk especially liked to wear his old, well-worn clothes all the time, garments that were adorned with many, many visible patches. Our esteemed teacher was truly remarkable. His profound wisdom, both worldly understanding and transcendent spiritual insight, including his insight into many of the major directions of the present and the future, was truly extraordinary. One day in class, he directly refuted this monk, pointedly asking, "Are you deliberately wearing old, worn-out clothes?" He then explained that if this was indeed the case, then even that act of intentionally wearing old garments would unfortunately become a subtle yet significant kind of attachment. There is absolutely no need at all to intentionally play the role of being poor. If you are especially attached in your heart to material possessions, then even if you pretend to be poor outwardly, you still won't achieve spiritual progress. But if you are not particularly attached to money in your mind and you view it naturally as a tool, even if you possess great wealth, even if you have piles of gold and silver as high as mountains, you still won't have any significant obstacles to your complete and true liberation. In the past, there was indeed such a notable and significant case within the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. There was a highly revered and influential person named Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. I'm curious if any of you present here today have ever heard of this remarkable individual. He lived approximately around the 19th century during that particular historical period. He was extremely renowned in Tibet. He received the transmissions from all the schools, including Sakya, Nyingma, and all the other lineages. Moreover, in terms of his spiritual attainment, he reached the highest level. All the different schools recognized this. At that particular time, he was an incredibly great, truly remarkable, and profoundly influential person. Even today, when we carefully look at his extensive writings, they are truly astonishing and deeply inspiring. He was also quite well off financially, possessing considerable wealth. He lived in Dij, a significant location in what is now Garze Prefecture. He was essentially like an emperor, wielding substantial influence. The place where he lived was magnificent and splendid. It was truly no different from a magnificent royal palace. He was indeed someone with exceptionally favorable circumstances and a very privileged position. There is another person, I don't know if you have heard of him, the author of The Great Perfection Preliminary Practices, Patrul Rinpoche. Patrul Rinpoche, throughout his entire life, always presented himself as what kind of person? He consistently appeared as a very humble and truly poor practitioner indeed. Wherever he went, he only had one set of clothes. He was basically what we now call a wandering monk, a monk who traveled everywhere. He was like that. But Patrul Rinpoche had a wooden bowl, a bowl made of wood. He was especially fond of this particular bowl. No matter where he traveled, he always carefully carried this cherished bowl with him. He was particularly attached to this bowl, really liked it. Wherever he went, he would never. Actually, in Tibet, there used to be this very old and significant tradition. However, it seems like it's not commonly practiced or observed anymore. In the past, everyone would typically take their very own personal bowl. When going out or visiting other people's homes, they would carefully carry it in their arms. Nowadays, some individuals genuinely think that this is not a particularly good habit, but I personally think it's actually quite a healthy and beneficial practice, because you use your own bowl to eat, and wherever you go, you just take it out. Even now, some elderly people in Tibetan areas still do this. Wherever they go, they won't use other people's bowls, only their own. Is it like this in Han areas? It seems like it's not anymore. Patrul Rinpoche used his own wooden bowl and was very attached to it. Later, he then went to meet Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. As soon as he entered his grand palace, he immediately developed a profoundly wrong view. He thought, my teacher is supposed to be so remarkable. But the opulent houses all around him, including the lavish decorations and furnishings inside, were far too luxurious, indeed too extravagant. He simply couldn't muster any genuine faith in his heart at all. When he arrived, it didn't seem like a practitioner's place at all. How could it be so extravagant? But after a while, he became especially attached to his own bowl. When they drank tea together, while drinking tea together, later the master Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo said to Patrul Rinpoche, actually, you absolutely shouldn't ever really think that my current practice is truly lacking in any significant way. When it comes to all this wealth, I am nowhere near as attached to it as you are to your wooden bowl, because Patrul Rinpoche was especially attached to his wooden bowl. He said, although it looks like I have so many possessions on the surface, I am not nearly as attached to them as you are to your wooden bowl. So sometimes we might think that being poor is a good thing, but if someone is poor, they might become especially attached to what little they have. For example, a poor person who has 10,000 yuan might be extremely, extremely attached to it. But a relatively wealthy person, although they may outwardly appear to have a substantial amount of money on the surface, in reality, they may not be very attached to money at all, or even particularly concerned with it. If you are not attached, then there won't be any major obstacles in your spiritual practice. In the past, in the profound teachings of the great Kagyu masters Tilopa and Naropa, he said, appearances won't bind you, attachment will bind you. What does this mean? No matter what appears before you, in reality, it won't greatly hinder your practice, attainment, or liberation. It won't be a major constraint. What exactly is your greatest constraint or most significant limitation? It is truly your deep attachment to it, our profound attachment to money, our strong attachment to our loved ones, and our many other attachments. The poor have attachments related to poverty, and the wealthy have attachments related to wealth. So the key is, at this point, we need to understand how you wisely use this money. If this significant amount of money is in the capable hands of a truly good practitioner, and if he possesses profound wisdom and skillful means, he will use it for liberation, bringing immense happiness to himself and to others. If the money is in the hands of a truly bad person, someone without wisdom or good judgment, it will be very harmful to himself and to others as well, potentially causing significant issues. So what I actually mean to say, in essence, is the essential key is whose hands the money is in. If that particular person possesses a certain significant level of realization, then they are truly enlightened. Then no matter how much gold and silver or treasure he has, it should not become an obstacle or a hindrance to his own personal practice or to the practices of others. In fact, it can truly bring about great and significant benefit to many people and the wider community. For example, nowadays in our modern world, we have a chemical element widely known as uranium. It is actually a type of metal, in fact. If this particular metal is utilized as a critical component in the intricate design of nuclear weapons, it can slowly and continuously undergo a process of nuclear fission. After this powerful and sustained fission, it produces an absolutely enormous amount of destructive power, which can utterly devastate and annihilate many worlds and civilizations. It can be turned into a destructive nuclear weapon, but if it is properly used in our current nuclear power plants, in fact, through this same energy, it can also be used beneficially for lighting. So whether uranium is beneficial or harmful depends on how you use it. If it is indeed used in nuclear weapons to potentially bomb some worlds or certain specific regions, it could have truly devastating consequences. Then it serves that destructive purpose. But if it is thoughtfully and widely used for other essential purposes, such as providing crucial lighting solutions, it can undoubtedly and profoundly benefit all of humanity and bring about truly great and significant advantages. Therefore, as insightful and responsible entrepreneurs, when we meticulously analyze various situations and things from a profound Buddhist perspective, having money or not actually has absolutely nothing to do with one's spiritual practice. There are also many truly wealthy individuals who practice exceptionally well and deeply. If we carefully consider many dedicated philanthropists around the world, including so many individuals both domestically and abroad, they consistently rely on their considerable good fortune and extensive resources to help countless individuals, a vast number of people across diverse communities. If their substantial wealth were not utilized in this profoundly beneficial manner, it could actually prove to be exceedingly detrimental and harmful to the well-being of humanity as a whole, and indeed to their own personal welfare and legacy. Therefore, my considered view is that for lay people, it is indeed very necessary to have a fundamental and comprehensive understanding of Buddhism. Furthermore, it is also profoundly important to diligently learn about and genuinely understand other diverse religions and spiritual traditions. I always strongly feel that our individual and collective mindset should consistently remain relatively open, receptive, and broad-minded. We shouldn't be confined by restrictions, afraid to look or to learn. Some people say that they are afraid to study Buddhism, worrying that they might break precepts if they do so. In fact, there is a big difference between studying Buddhism and not studying it. After you thoroughly study it, you might find it profoundly helps you adjust your mindset exceptionally well. Perhaps you used to be especially restless, but after carefully reading a comprehensive book or relying on a trusted mentor, or after diligently learning some insightful theories about the mind, you may truly become stronger within yourself in the future. When you become strong inside, indeed. In fact, no matter what happens externally, you will certainly have the ability to effectively face and overcome these problems. However, if our own mental training and preparedness are not adequately in place, then even if the external environment is great and you possess a lot of wealth and resources, the pain inside may still truly be completely impossible to fully resolve. Therefore, to effectively resolve suffering, we need a particular kind of wisdom. What does Buddhism specifically say about this wisdom? It talks about the four seals, which are fundamental and core principles in Buddhism and serve as foundational principles. All conditioned phenomena are inherently suffering. All compounded things are truly impermanent. All phenomena are entirely without self and are fundamentally empty in nature. Nirvana is profound peace. These profound truths are called the four seals. Of course, the meaning of these four seals, for those of you who have not really studied or indeed ever professionally practiced them at all before, at first, this may sound rather unfamiliar. But I also sincerely hope that while you are achieving significant success in your career, you will also pay careful attention to the inner aspects of the spiritual world. In this way, perhaps your life will become more complete and truly fulfilling. More importantly, the ultimate teaching of Mahayana Buddhism, including the main purpose after you attain Buddhahood, is to benefit all sentient beings. Therefore, in conclusion, I also sincerely hope that everyone here in the remaining years you have left in this precious life will often endeavor to help others by relying on your own unique abilities and profound wisdom. As entrepreneurs, especially successful people like you in society, we should not monopolize all the resources for ourselves. Recently, I have seen some behaviors, including those of corrupt officials, and indeed it is quite clear that some people have unfortunately taken up far too many of humanity's precious resources. They have not made much significant contribution to society. Such actions may also inevitably bring about a swift and severe retribution. It is very easy to encounter the direct and unavoidable consequences of one's own actions. Therefore, people should always act with a clear conscience and strictly according to established moral principles. Once you have a certain level of capability, you cannot forget that there are still so many people around us who are poor, destitute, suffering, and in need. We often hear all kinds of cries and wails of misery from outside. We frequently come across many helpless and lonely people. These people, to varying degrees, should be helped within the full scope of our capabilities and abilities. This is an extremely important and crucial point to consider. Once, I vividly recall seeing a 6-year-old child who was visiting from Canada. After he initially heard some compelling and impactful stories about the continent of Africa, he realized that many children there actually have difficulty going to school and have no access to clean, readily available water. He heard that a sum of $70 could build a well, so he started thinking of various ways to help the community. Later, when he finally got the money, it wasn't just $70, it was already $2,000. To him, that was an astronomical figure. Then he tried every possible way to earn more money by working part-time. Eventually, he really did earn the full $2,000 and personally went to Africa to dig a well himself. He has been doing this since he was 6 years old. That day, a Buddhist friend of mine from Canada asked him about this story. They said that now he is already in his 20s and he is still doing it. Later, according to related information, he has already changed the lives of 800,000 people by providing them with drinking water. Actually, he was just an ordinary 6-year-old child. A sense of compassion was awakened in his heart, and this compassion that was stirred in his heart in the end was truly put into action. He dramatically changed the fate of so many people's lives. So, although some of us have considerable blessings in this regard, we basically don't use them to contribute actively to society or benefit humanity. We even lack self-cultivation in this particular area, which is a significant oversight, whether it's our formal education systems, our academic textbooks, or even in the subtle nuances of our daily lives, including our casual conversations or the fundamental values we uphold. We rarely hear about this crucial aspect. But in some other countries, it's common to hear about someone doing charity work today and someone else doing charity work tomorrow. It should be like this. But nowadays, many of us think that when charity is mentioned, it must mean donating money. Actually, I've spoken at different charity conferences before and said that we don't necessarily have to donate money. Charity doesn't always require money. Everyone should always possess a compassionate heart for performing good deeds. That is what makes someone a philanthropist. It's not that you have to spend millions or tens of millions to be considered a philanthropist. But what do many of us think? We think that people without money can't possibly do charity. And that for those who are wealthy, aside from donating some money, but that's not the case. Money isn't what's truly important. What's far more important is having a genuinely kind heart. If you possess a truly kind heart, then gradually its inherent power will undoubtedly begin to show. So, let's carefully consider our everyday daily lives. Many individuals in the foreseeable future within this complex and interconnected world should conscientiously play their own essential and unique roles. I sincerely hope that here we can all cultivate a more profound and positive understanding of Buddhism. You absolutely do not need to worry that by diligently studying the profound principles of Buddhism or by deeply researching its intricate and ancient teachings, you will be compelled to relinquish or abandon all your worldly possessions, your current lifestyle, or your personal aspirations. In fact, in Buddhist history, there was a king named Enzebude. At that particular time, he was truly unwilling to give up his beloved family, nor did he want to abandon his palace. But he really wanted to study. Later, the Buddha taught him the profound Dharma through another method. Historically, he achieved significant realization. Even among the esteemed lineage masters whom we diligently follow, he stands out. There are those who have attained significant accomplishments, much like Enzebude. Therefore, we should strive to have a truly comprehensive and profound understanding of Buddhism. We absolutely shouldn't have a narrow or one-sided view. At the very same time, since we have been granted this incredibly rare human life, it's best for us to have some spiritual guidance. And for this particular kind of spiritual guidance, we should conscientiously set aside a significant amount of time. I truly hope everyone doesn't just merely stay on the surface of things. Those who have studied should go deeper in their learning.
You should study from the 5 great treatises of the exoteric tradition all the way to Vajrayana, because many of us may always remain at a rather superficial level, never truly delving into the deeper aspects of understanding. Without ever delving deeper, if that's the case, it would be a real pity. You truly have such good opportunities, great wisdom, and favorable conditions. At this time, if you encounter such truths, it is truly very important, no matter what the situation, as the wise ancients used to say. The profound truth is often held securely in the capable hands of a select few. So, in this complex world, whether it is the tangible worldly truth or the more abstract transcendental truth, it will consistently remain within the grasp of not too many people, but rather a limited number of discerning individuals. But this particular kind of fundamental truth is something that we really and truly need to fully understand directly. At the very same time, each and every one of us has the causes and merit to seek the truth. The key is how we make use of it ourselves. This depends on our own wisdom. I think I'll stop here for now.